angles? Well, we did mention, so that you could do your homework, that there was a relationship between wherever your coordinate point was and what your sine, cosine, tangent was. So we said, you know what? If we think about our reference angle, let's just talk about it in the first quadrant because we can. That's my angle. In my unit circle, we said always that is going to be 1, my hypotenuse. That draws me a circle with radius of 1, hence unit circle. We said this coordinate out here was x, comma, y, and that meant that we go over x and up y to make my triangle. And when I'm doing that with the coordinate plane, the sine of an angle, how do you calculate sine? Opposite over hypotenuse, so y over 1 is just y. Cosine of an angle is going to be adjacent over hypotenuse. So that's just x. And really, let me make sure, we're going to come back and we're going to do this a little bit more specific, but generally speaking, r is going to be 1, so we can just do that. And then tangent is going to be what over what? Y over x. So that means we can even think about their reciprocals. I did r because I'm just kind of trying to generalize that no matter what our radius is. Okay. So cosecant pairs up with which one? Sine. Each pair has a co. So the cosecant is the reciprocal of sine, so what's the cosecant? 1 over y, or if you don't know the radius, r over y. What would the secant be? R over x, unit circle, r is 1. Cotangent? X over y. Now, we like doing this with our unit circles because the radius is 1. It makes all of these 4 go super, super easy. But we are going to be doing next class, what happens if it's not perfectly on the unit circle? How do we deal with it? So there's that, understanding that if we know our x and our y, we can find sine, cosine, and tangent. And there's also a little trick so that you only need to use that first quadrant. And I've got my first quadrant here drawn. That's all I need. If I think about this, all students take calculus. It's a little mnemonic device to remember how things work out. A stands for all of your signs are positive in the first quadrant. Got that? S stands for only the sine is going to be positive. Because in the second quadrant, what are your signs for every point? Negative, positive. So only the sine, which is my y, is going to be positive. My cosine and my tangent are both going to be negative. Third quadrant, I have negative, negative. So that means sine, cosine are negative. Tangent is going to be positive, hence the t. Because negative over negative is a positive. And in my fourth quadrant, that's positive, negative. So sine is negative, cosine is positive, tangent is y over x, so tangent will be negative. So in first quadrant, everything is positive. Sine, cosine, tangent, everything. Second quadrant, only the sine and its reciprocal are going to be positive. Everything else will be negative. And the third quadrant, t, only tangent and its reciprocal will be positive. And in the fourth quadrant, C, only cosine and its reciprocal will be positive. So how do I put all of this together? Everything that we've talked about. Ready? This is as complicated as today gets, and we're just going to be practicing this. 240. What quadrant is that in? That's the third quadrant. So quadrant 3, all students take. And that's because my coordinate is negative, negative. So that means only the tangent and its reciprocal will be positive. Everything else is going to be negative. You with me so far? Yes. For the sine, cosine, tangent, no. All of those that has a range from -1, well, tangent can, but sine and cosine cannot. And we'll talk about that when we get to graphing these things. Yes, we're going to be graphing these things. All right, so we've talked about quadrants. All students take calculus. The sines, let's get to the reference angle. What is this closest to? 0, 180, or 360? 180. So how far do I need to move to get to 180? 60. 60 is your reference angle. So that means if I know my first quadrant, I know at 60, my coordinate is 1/2 √3/2. Sine is the y. Cosine is the x. Those are going to be negative because this is in the third quadrant. Or because you're in the t. Only the tangent's going to be positive. Tangent's the one that's a little bit ickier. Tangent, I'm going to put what over what? Y over x. So negative √3/2. And instead of putting it over, I'm going to times by the reciprocal. What is that going to give me? I'm sorry, that was supposed to be negative. It's going to be positive √3. The ickiest part about this are those guys. I mean, it's easy to understand what they're going to do, but you're going to have to rationalize. You look questioning. So tangent is y over x. So √3/2 times the reciprocal, because that's over. 2's cancel each other out. Negatives cancel each other out. And you're left with √3/1. It's okay. So then when we do the cosecant, it's also going to be negative. It's going to be the reciprocal. Hopefully you guys are getting to the point where you can quickly look at that and tell me what that would be rationalized. What would that be? Only it'd be negative 2 √3/3. When you have the root in the denominator, move it to the top, drop that square root symbol. Secant, the reciprocal of -1/2 is -2. That's a nice one. Cotangent is the reciprocal of √3. So what's the reciprocal of √3? No, √3 is currently sitting over 1. So what's the reciprocal? 1 over √3, which simplifies to √3/3. There we go. Sorry, I just heard √3. Yes. Tangent and cotangent can. Sine and cosine, secant and cosecant. Well, sine and cosine have to be between 0 and 1. These guys are. Those can be, because they're reciprocals, they can be anything. And again, when we talk about graphing, you'll see how that works out with that limited range. All right. Tangent is y over x. So cotangent is x over y. 3 pi over 4. What quadrant is that in? That's in quadrant 2. So what letter goes with that? All students take calculus. S. And that's because in quadrant 2 we're negative positive. So that means the sine and its reciprocal are positive. The cosine, tangent, and their reciprocals are going to be negative. S means only the sine is positive. What is the reference angle? Yay! It is radians. Pi over 4. And all of my pi over 4s share the same coordinate. where it's root 2 over 2, root 2 over 2, we just have these signs. So what is the sine? S-I-N, what's the sine? Root 2 over 2. What is the cosine? Negative root 2 over 2. Think, think, think. What's the tangent? Negative 1, because any number over itself is always 1. Now I'm going to give you a second. I want you to think through the reciprocals. Think through those, see what you would get. Do you guys think you have them? Check your answer with your neighbor for me, please. Look around. Did you come up with the right thing? This can get a little bit ickier. So does anybody get what the cosecant of theta would be? Square root of 2. So let me show you where this comes from. Because those are your answers. Root 2, negative root 2, and negative 1. Where the heck did these come from? If I start off with root 2 over 2, and I do the reciprocal of that, that becomes 2 over the square root of 2. Which, move this to the top. Take off the root, simplify, leaves me with the square root of 2. Okay? The beautiful thing is that between these two answers, we basically have shown you all of the possible numbers that you can come up with. There's not a huge variety of answers that you can have. There just isn't. So, this is what your quiz next class is going to look like. A whole bunch of those. No. When it says find the following, it just means find that one piece. Now, I don't know about you. Don't go around spreading this to all the other math teachers. I don't want to be made fun of. I stink at memorizing, which means I stink at memorizing the unit circle. Which means every time I do one of these problems, I start with this. I sketch my first quadrant, where I'll do angles. Let's see here. We're going to have 3 dots here. I'll go 0, 30 degrees, 45 degrees. Come on, Augsburger. 60 degrees. 90 degrees. I'll do my radians. So it'll be 0, pi over 6, pi over 4, pi over 3, pi over 2. And then my favorite thing to do, because I think it's so awesome that you can do this, is go, I know that point is 1, 0. I know that point is 0, 1. I know all of those points are over 2. So I go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's all I need. If I have my first quadrant, I can put that together with my all students take calculus and find every single thing that I need. Would it be faster to have them memorized? Of course. but I'm really bad at that. So, I've got my little tool, because that's what your unit circle is. It's a tool to help you evaluate things like this. And I say 7 pi over 4. Which one? Fourth. So that's in quadrant 4. So all students take calculus. What is that? All students take calculus, so that's the C. So that means that my answer is going to be positive. What is my reference angle? Pi over 4. And at pi over 4, that's my coordinate, root 2 over 2. What is the cosine? Root 2 over 2. Done. Okay? This one's a little bit weird. Tangent of 180. Slow down. Stop giving away all of my secrets. Tangent of 180. How far away is that from 0, 180, or 360? It is one of those. It is 0 degrees away. So 0 is my reference angle. And the 180s, the 360s, the 90s, the 270s, those guys you want to think about literally what is the coordinate at that point. At 180, what is the coordinate? -1, 0. And tangent is what is that? 0. That is not undefined. It is 0. If the 0 was in the denominator, then it would have been undefined. Okay, let's just do one more together, and then I'll set you loose to do a couple on your own. If we're looking at number 21, we have the secant of 2 pi over 3. What quadrant is that in? That's in quadrant 2. What's the reference angle? Pi over 3. And in quadrant 2, what letter do we have? S. Secant is the reciprocal of what? Cosine. Every pair has a co. So secant pairs up with cosine. Will my cosine be positive or negative? Negative, because only the sine is positive. So I'm going to have negative. I'm going to think about pi over 3, that coordinate right there. Secant is the cosine. Cosine is which coordinate, x or y? And do the reciprocal. What's the reciprocal of 1/2? 2. So -2 is your answer. It's just going to be a whole bunch of those problems. You're going to have 20 of these problems to do in 20 minutes. Okay? So why don't we guys, I want you guys to do these 3 together. Partner up if you need to. Just do those 3 real quick. See if you can knock them out. Yes. Homework is exactly this. Oh, dang it. I didn't freeze it. It was up there the whole time. Come on, Augsburger. So take a look at my answers, I guess, if you hadn't noticed that, because you were so diligently working like the awesome people you are. I had 22 was -1, 23 was undefined, and 24 was 1/2. How are you doing with those? 23, sure. Anytime that we have any of my angles that go for either 0, 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 270, or if I have pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, anytime I have any one of those, I don't even think about the quadrants. I automatically go to what is the coordinate point. And you know it's going to be 0 and 1 or -1. What order do they go in? So on 23, that's pi. That's out here. So that's in the negative direction. So that's negative 1, 0. And you can even see here that I'll always even write that down. I need to see it. And then I say cotangent. Tangent is y over x. So cotangent is x over y. And ladies and gentlemen, there had been a middle school teacher who had been telling students that it's okay to write u. U is not shorthand for anything. You have to write undefined or UND. That's an approved shorthand. If you give me u, I'm going to give you an x. How's that sound? Okay. So I've given you a little sheet of paper. And this guy here is extremely similar to what your quiz is going to look like. Your quiz will have 20 of these on them. But other than that, it's this. So I know that you're not going to be able to finish this all because we only have, what is this? 12 minutes left? 12 minutes left, and you have 14 problems. You can do whichever ones you want, but I will be looking at probably expecting you to get at least 7 of these done. Okay, at least half of it. Understand what I'm talking about there? Your choice which ones you want to do. Go ahead and do them. And before you leave, make sure you turn this in. If you do not turn this in, you get a 0. Okay? You're welcome to work together. And that's it.